A dog walked 50 miles to find its owner, but then this happened. The dog's paws were raw, each step a sharp reminder of how far he had come. A subtle drizzle soaked his matted fur, an unrelenting mist that had turned into a downpour just hours ago. He was limping along the side of a lonely highway, head bowed but eyes vigilant, nose twitching to pick up a scent he had spent days longing for. With each mile behind him, he held one thing firmly in his resolute heart. He had to find his owner, no matter what it took. It had all begun 3 weeks earlier on a scorching summer afternoon. Car windows rattled in the suffocating heat, and the asphalt shimmered like molten glass under the relentless glare of the sun. In a dusty parking lot behind a small diner, the dog, named Max, had been waiting patiently for his owner, a man named Clay. Clay was everything to Max: caretaker, friend, confidant. They had shared a bond that ran deep. Clay had rescued Max from an overcrowded shelter 2 years prior, sealing a quiet promise that he would never abandon him. But somehow, in the swirl of human complication, Max had found himself alone. The day of their separation was supposed to be routine, another cross-country drive for Clay's job. He loaded boxes into the back of his pickup, secured them with bungee cords, patted Max on the head, and whispered, "We'll be on the road soon, buddy." Then Clay stepped inside the diner for a quick sandwich, leaving Max in a shady spot behind the building with a bowl of water. Minutes stretched to hours. The sunlight shifted, the air cooled, and Max's heart began pounding. He waited, pacing the length of a battered chain-link fence. He nudged the bowl of water, expecting to hear Clay's familiar whistle that always signaled his return. But Clay never came back. Days passed before a diner employee coaxed Max into her car with bits of leftover hamburger. She took him home temporarily, fed him, and tried to locate Clay. She placed calls to the phone number on Max's collar, posted about a missing owner on social media, and contacted shelters in the area. No one knew where Clay had gone. Many assumed that Clay had left the dog behind, either forgetting or choosing to abandon him. But Max refused to believe that. His wagging tail drooped with confusion, but never once had his bright, intelligent eyes lost faith. At night, he whimpered in the corner of a strange living room, staring at the front door as though Clay might burst through it at any moment. After a week in limbo, the diner employee who had been caring for Max realized she couldn't keep him indefinitely. She planned to drop him off at an animal rescue, albeit a decent one, in hopes someone else would eventually adopt him. The day she loaded Max into her car for the trip, the dog trembled. There was a primal urging in him, a memory of Clay's scent, of the voice that calmed him with each syllable, of hands that scratched him behind the ears and made him feel safe. So Max waited for the moment she opened the car door at a red light, perhaps to toss a bit of trash or adjust the seat belt. The instant she did, Max leaped out and vanished into the throng of moving cars, horns blaring angrily as he dodged bumpers and swirling exhaust. For 2 days he roamed the outskirts of town, sniffing half-eaten meals on sidewalks, lapping up muddy water from puddles. He scanned every face, every silhouette, hoping for a glimpse of the man who had once been his entire world. A battered memory tugged at Max's instincts. Clay's last known location, the roads leading out of the diner, the direction of the old truck's tires. Something told him to head north, as if the wind carried Clay's faint echo from that direction. So north he went, running under the punishing sun, through broken fences, across farmland dotted with grazing cattle and startled deer. On the third night away from the diner, Max found refuge in a deserted barn. The air was thick with the scent of cobwebs and rotting hay. Exhaustion weighed on him, but within the heavy cloak of tiredness was a flicker of fierce devotion. When the morning light broke through the gaps in the barn's wooden slats, Max rose. His paws stung from cracked pads and hunger gnawed at his belly, but he kept going. He moved from field to field, occasionally chasing a rabbit out of desperation. He never caught one, though. His malnourished body lacked the speed it once had, but the desire to see Clay again drove him forward in a trance-like determination. When nightfall arrived again, he found himself limping along a deserted back road, its surface rough and gritty. A car's headlights approached and Max froze, blinded by the glare. The car slowed, and a woman's gentle voice called out. She set out a small dish of water, speaking softly as she edged closer. Max wanted to trust her. She smelled kind, like lavender soap and warm bread, but a primal fear kept him rooted in place, poised to run at the slightest threat. Finally, thirst won out, and he bowed his head to lap water from the dish. The woman tried to coax him into her car, but Max was too anxious. He gulped the water, then darted off into the night with a fragile bark of gratitude echoing behind him. The woman watched, heartbreak in her eyes. She posted later on a community forum. Saw a tan dog limping on Old Mill Road, tried to help him, but he ran away. Looks like he's searching for something. Anyone missing a dog? The post received a handful of shares, a few empathetic comments, but none led to Clay. None could direct Max to the place he so desperately needed to be. As dawn broke again, Max's pace slowed to a labored trot. A truck roared past, and he almost tumbled into a ditch, startled by the sudden whoosh of air. His sense of smell picked up random scents: foxes, skunks, faint traces of deer. But nowhere in that tapestry of aromas did he catch Clay's familiar odor. His eyelids were heavy and his tongue lolled out, parched beyond measure. Yet he pressed on. There was no giving up. To him, each step forward was a step closer to the only human he had truly known as family. That same afternoon, the sky unleashed a thunderstorm. Lightning split the horizon as thunder reverberated across the fields. Streams of rainwater sloshed around Max's ankles, and every stray gust of wind cut through his drenched fur. Still, he trudged on, crossing an empty stretch of farmland until at last he found himself on a major highway. Semi-trucks blared their horns and cars screeched as they slowed to avoid him. He stumbled over a chunk of tire debris and collapsed in a patch of mud, chest heaving. This was the brink, that place between survival and surrender. But then a memory awakened in him: Clay's laughter. That rich, warm sound that used to make Max's tail wag so hard his entire body would shake. He remembered Clay's hands offering him a treat for sitting, for rolling over, for simply being good. He recalled nights curled up at Clay's feet, the comfort of a shared breath in the darkness. Bolstered by these recollections, Max forced himself to stand. One uncertain step followed another until he reached the shoulder of the road and continued forward. Cars kept zooming by, the wind from their speed ruffling his fur, but he did not falter. He was only aware of the next step and the next. Hours slipped away, and with them more of Max's strength. Yet around every bend, over every hill, he expected to see Clay, maybe pulled over in the old pickup, scanning the horizon for a lost dog. That mental image kept Max alive, fanning the embers of hope. Even as the storm raged overhead, with water streaming down his muzzle and stinging his eyes, Max never lost faith. The miles melted behind him. 50 miles or 100, it made no difference. He would travel them all if it meant being with Clay again. At dusk, the rain finally tapered off, leaving behind thick clouds that glowed ominously with the last hues of dying daylight. Max stumbled onto a smaller road branching away from the highway. It twisted through a sheltered landscape of tall oaks and pines, their dripping branches forming a tunnel of leaves overhead. Fallen twigs snapped under his paws as he staggered forward, each snap echoing in the still, post-storm silence. He encountered a deer that bolted at the sight of him, kicking up a spray of water from the soggy underbrush. Max longed to follow, to run with a sense of purpose, but his body would no longer allow it. Instead, his nose kept searching for that one scent he knew as intimately as his own heartbeat. He found only the subtle smell of wet pine needles, decaying logs, and the faint musk of forest creatures. Somewhere far ahead, lightning lit the horizon for a final time before disappearing, leaving the world in deep, velvety darkness. Max paused, ears perked, listening for anything that might guide him. A rustle of leaves, the whisper of wind, the distant call of an owl, these were the only sounds. His stomach rumbled loudly, a painful reminder that he hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. In his old life with Clay, he'd received 2 square meals a day, and all the table scraps his bright brown eyes could charm out of his human companion. Now, hunger was a companion of its own, persistent and unwavering. He pressed on, the clouds eventually parting to reveal slivers of moonlight. The path widened, and soon he spotted the outlines of modest farmhouses scattered in the distance. Each had its own security light illuminating the yard. Pastures and fences lay between him and those warm lights. Max's tail gave a tentative wag. Perhaps he would find kindness behind one of those doors. Perhaps the occupant would have a porch he could curl up under for the night. But then he remembered the well-intentioned strangers who had tried to help him. Good intentions meant kindness, but kindness meant captivity, and captivity meant never seeing Clay again. So he skulked through the tall grass, careful to avoid the pools of yellow light in the yards. He was a ghost dog on a mission, a silent traveler in the night. Eventually, exhaustion and cold overcame his instincts. He found a small overhang at the edge of a rickety shed near a farmhouse. The smell of old wood and rusting tools was pungent, but at least it was dry. Max curled up, trembling from fatigue, the chill of the damp night seeping into his bones. In fleeting moments before sleep he saw Clay in his mind's eye, a comforting silhouette leaning against a pickup truck, arms crossed, face softened by an affectionate smile. Max drifted into restless dreams where he and Clay chased tennis balls through wide-open fields, the sky a bright, infinite blue. In those dreams there was no separation, no longing, only the warmth of belonging. When dawn arrived, gray and uninviting, Max roused himself. Rainwater dripped from the edges of the shed's roof, forming muddy puddles in the yard. A rooster crowed, rousing the farm to life. Inside the farmhouse, lights flicked on, a sign that the occupants would soon be stirring. Max slunk away, weaving through patches of tall grass until he reached the dirt road again. Each step on the uneven ground sent jolts of pain through his paw pads. Still, he kept moving. Each day was a test of will, and he met it with unwavering resolve. By midday, the sun broke through. Golden beams filtered through shifting clouds, warming Max's back and drying his soggy coat. With renewed vigor, he trotted onto another desolate stretch of pavement. His tongue lolled, panting in the humid post-rain air. The day seemed endless. He passed a rusted-out mailbox leaning precariously to one side, then another, and then a sign for a service road that led to a dilapidated motel. The place looked long abandoned, with boarded windows and a sagging roof. Still, where there were buildings, there might be scraps of food. Max ventured closer, sniffing around the motel parking lot. Weeds had grown through the cracked asphalt, and an eerie silence enveloped the place. As he rounded the corner of the building, he heard a noise. For a moment, panic seized him, a million instincts telling him to retreat. But hunger drove him forward. Carefully, he peered into what might have once been a dumpster area. He saw movement, a small stray cat rummaging through scattered trash bags. The cat looked up, startled, its spine arching, fur bristling. Max lowered his head in a show of peace. He wasn't here to fight. He just needed a morsel of whatever the cat had found. Perhaps sensing his desperation, the cat backed away, allowing Max to sniff a torn trash bag. There, among rotting lettuce and used paper towels, he found half a sandwich, moldy but edible. He ate it, ignoring the bitter taste and the filth, spurred on by the gnawing emptiness in his belly. Fueled by that meager meal, Max pressed on once more. The sun rose higher, scorching the asphalt beneath his paws. Each new mile felt like a personal battle against despair. The daily march was an act of faith, a belief that Clay was out there somewhere, waiting or searching. In reality, the dog had no evidence that Clay was anywhere nearby, But reason and logic weren't part of Max's equation. Love guided him. Devotion compelled him. Late afternoon drifted in, and with it came a wave of exhaustion so potent that Max could barely keep his eyes open. The road beneath him began to blur. He stumbled off the shoulder, nearly collapsing into a shallow ditch. As he lay there panting, waves of dizziness rolled through him. He was dangerously dehydrated. His body shook. The world felt too heavy, too bright, too overwhelming for a creature so weary. He closed his eyes, letting darkness enfold him, and he dreamed once more of Clay's voice. When he opened his eyes, everything was hazy. He smelled a faint whiff of gasoline, felt the rumble of an engine. Suddenly, he realized he was lying in the back of a truck, nestled between two hay bales. His fur bristled with alarm. He tried to scramble to his feet, but his limbs rebelled, too drained to function properly. Then a soothing voice reached his ears, an older man with a gentle southern drawl. "Easy there, fella," the man said. "You were out cold in the ditch, couldn't just leave you there." Max's heart thundered in his chest. He looked around wildly, ready to leap out and continue his quest. But the man offered water in a battered metal bowl. Thirst overcame fear, and Max lapped it up, feeling the cool liquid course through his parched throat. "Don't worry," the man murmured, stroking Max's ears softly. "We'll get you fixed up." As the truck rumbled on, Max drifted in and out of consciousness, exhaustion claiming him. Through half-closed eyes, he saw glimpses of farmland rolling past, felt the old truck bouncing along a dirt road, and smelled the leathery interior of the cab. Eventually, the truck stopped. The man carefully lifted Max from the bed, carrying him like a child into a small barn. The smell of horse feed, old timbers, and sweet hay enveloped him. The man placed Max on a soft mound of straw. Another bowl of water appeared, along with a dish of something that smelled heavenly, canned dog food. Max ate quietly, aware of the man's watchful gaze. And for the first time since his journey began, a wave of warmth spread through him, the kindness of a stranger offering a fleeting respite from the harshness of the road. He felt the man's coarse hands gently examining his paws, his limbs, his ears. He heard him mutter, "Poor boy's been through a war," and a pang of sorrow twisted in Max's heart. For the remainder of that day and well into the evening, Max rested, lulled by the distant sound of crickets and the rustle of hay. When night fell, the older man returned with a lantern, his expression kind yet firm. He checked Max over once more, applying a slave to the cracked paw pads. Max winced at the initial sting, but relief soon followed. It was the first real care he had received since leaving the diner. "I don't see a collar," the man murmured. "Did you have an owner, boy? Someone lost you." Max lowered his gaze, remembering the old collar with Clay's phone number. At some point during his frantic run from the highway, or maybe while slipping under a fence, the collar must have fallen off. Now no outward sign remained of Clay. All Max had was the internal compass guiding him, an unbreakable tether to the memory of the man who once promised forever. He spent 2 nights on that farm. The man tried to coax Max into his house, but the dog refused, staying near the barn's entrance, always looking to the horizon. Despite the man's generosity, Max grew restless. He recognized kindness, but also the boundary that kindness could become. The next night, as the stars sparkled in a velvet sky, Max slipped away, leaving behind a small puddle of water and an untouched bowl of kibble. The man's sorrowful sigh echoed in the darkness as he watched from a distance, respecting the dog's silent determination. Max was back on the road, battered and bruised but driven by an unrelenting hope. The memory of Clay's scent felt more distant now, but it still flickered faintly in the corners of Max's mind. He picked up the pace, ignoring the searing pain in his limbs. Gravel roads turned into asphalt again. Night turned into day, then back into night. The world blurred. Every so often, a well-meaning soul would approach him, offer a handout or a chance to rest, but Max could never linger long. He was an arrow shot from the bow of devotion, sailing forward to a destination no one else could see. And then, on a humid afternoon filled with the drone of cicadas, something changed. Max caught a familiar scent carried by a gentle breeze. His entire body quivered. Could it be Clay? He raised his muzzle, drawing in a lungful of air. Yes, there it was, a faint trace, barely discernible but powerful enough to jolt his weary spirit. The scent sparked an electric current in Max's veins, and he surged forward, ignoring the agony in his paws and the emptiness in his stomach. He followed it through a battered fence, across a deserted lawn, and up a narrow side street. The air was thick with dust, but that elusive aroma grew stronger. His heart pounded wildly. Finally, the scent led him to a small, peeling bungalow. The yard was overgrown with weeds, the paint chipped, the windows dark. Max approached cautiously, half expecting to see Clay step out from behind the front door. But the house was still and silent. Confused, Max circled the property, sniffing the porch steps, the door frame, the mailbox stuffed with yellowing envelopes. Clay's scent was here, woven into the very wood of the house, but it was old, as if Clay had once lived there long ago. Disappointment coursed through Max. He whimpered, pressing his muzzle against the door, scratching at the faded boards. No answer, no sign of life. He lingered for hours, unwilling to leave. At dusk, a neighbor pulled into her driveway next door, groceries piled high in the backseat. She spotted Max and approached cautiously, speaking in a low, soothing tone. Max let her come close enough to see the hope and desperation mingling in his eyes. She recognized the signs of a lost dog, eyes scanning his battered frame. "Did someone leave you behind?" she asked gently, though Max couldn't understand the words. She gestured to the empty bungalow. "You waiting for the old tenant? He's gone, sweet boy." Gone. The word carried finality in any language. Max sensed the neighbor's pity, but he also sensed that Clay was not there. His tail drooped. The neighbor fetched a dish of water, setting it on the porch. Max drank gratefully but refused to enter her home. When darkness fell, he curled up on that porch, nose pressed to the door as if he might smell Clay on the other side. He stayed until dawn, torn between the undeniable presence of Clay's scent and the equally undeniable emptiness of the house. By morning, he knew he had to move on. As the sun rose, Max plodded away, a fresh wave of sorrow threatening to extinguish his last embers of strength. Clay had been here once, but not anymore. Where else could he be? For the first time, doubts gnawed at Max's heart. He wandered onto an empty street, the sky tinted pink with early morning light. For days he drifted from one road to the next, each new location bringing only heartbreak and loneliness. At times, it felt like Clay's image was fading from his mind, replaced by the harsh realities of survival. But then he would remember a small detail: the shape of Clay's boots, the timbre of his voice humming a lullaby, or the comforting crinkle of a fast food bag when Clay bought him a treat. Such memories refueled his spirit, reminding him that though the world was vast, he had to keep looking. In a dingy alley behind a strip mall, Max once again rummaged for scraps. He felt a twinge in his back leg, likely a sprain he'd gotten hopping a fence. His muzzle brushed up against a broken glass bottle, and a thin trail of blood trickled from a cut on his snout. Tears blurred his vision. Did dogs cry tears of despair, or was it just the sting of the cut? Either way, a fresh wave of pain coursed through him, but he pressed on, drawn by something intangible. That night, sleep came in fitful bursts. Thunderstorms loomed again, and in the distance, the sky flickered like a broken strobe light. His battered body pleaded for rest, for a safe place to recuperate. Yet the road ahead felt too urgent, too critical to ignore. If Clay was truly still out there, Max was already late. He had to keep going. The next day dawned with a shimmering heat, the thunderstorms having bypassed the region. Max's coat was dull and clumped with dried mud. He scarcely resembled the lively, well-cared-for dog that once curled at Clay's feet. But as fate would have it, a miracle was about to unfold, one that would put his unwavering loyalty to the ultimate test. He spotted it first as a shape on the horizon, a silhouette of a man leaning against an old sedan, the sun's glare making it impossible to discern his features. Max's heart gave a jolt. Hope surged so powerfully that he broke into a desperate run, ignoring the pain in his paws. But as he drew closer, he realized the man was not Clay. The figure was taller, skinnier, with a wide-brimmed hat. Max slowed, feeling the ache of yet another disappointment. Still, he needed water, needed rest. He edged closer, his posture low and unthreatening. The man noticed him and bent down, extending a hand. A wave of caution rolled through Max. He had accepted help before, only to be nearly trapped or taken away. But thirst was a fierce negotiator, and so he cautiously advanced. "Hey, boy," the man said, voice a soft rasp. He unscrewed a thermos and poured some water onto the ground. Max inched forward, eyes flicking between the water and the man's face, then lapped it up. Cool relief coursed through his body. The man gently patted Max's head. When he tried to grab Max by the scruff, possibly to check for tags, Max jerked away, hackles rising. "It's okay. Easy," the man whispered. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "No collar, huh? You look like you've been on the road a while." Max whimpered, stepping back to maintain distance. The man sighed, got into his sedan, and rummaged around. He emerged with some beef jerky. The smell made Max's mouth water. He devoured it, maintaining eye contact all the while. After that, the man offered no further attempts to restrain him. Instead, he walked back to his car and drove away, leaving Max alone again with the scorching asphalt beneath his feet. The fleeting comfort of human kindness was bittersweet, a reminder that he could find help, but not from the person he truly needed. As the day wore on, Max kept moving. The roads converged near a small town that boasted a single blinking traffic light and a row of old shops. He darted between parked cars, his nose skimming the air for any trace of Clay. Everywhere he looked, people bustled. An old woman pushing a shopping cart, a teenager riding a bicycle, a man in a grease-stained apron hauling out a bag of trash. None of them were Clay. Max's heart sank deeper into his chest. He felt like a stranger in a world that only half noticed him. Then, through the open door of a hardware store, he caught a whiff of something faint but hauntingly familiar. Clay. It had that same underlying note of sawdust and spice that he associated with his owner. Max nearly toppled a display of garden tools in his haste to scramble inside. The store owner shouted, "Hey, dog, get out of here." But Max ignored him, sniffing frantically at the floorboards, the corners of the aisles. The scent was old, lingering in the cracks of wooden planks. It led him to a back room where the store owner's angry voice cornered him. "Shoo, dog." The man swung a broom. Terrified, Max backed up against a shelf of screws and nails, knocking several boxes to the floor. One or two nails scattered under his paws, forcing him to dance clumsily to avoid injury. The store owner advanced, brandishing the broom. With no other choice, Max bolted past him and out the door, nearly colliding with a customer on the sidewalk. Outside, his heart still hammered in his chest, the old trace of Clay's scent already fading in the open air. Whatever had drawn him, there was just a remnant of the past, a ghost that refused to manifest into reality. Discouraged, Max retreated to a narrow alley behind the shops, trembling with adrenaline and heartbreak. That evening, the sun slipped below the rooftops, painting the sky with bands of orange and pink. Max found a small patch of grass beside a dumpster, where he curled up for a fitful rest. His dreams were anxious, replaying the store owner's furious face, the broom swinging menacingly, and the sound of nails scattering. Then Clay appeared, smiling, arms open, and Max ran to him. But just as their paws and arms were about to meet, Clay vanished like smoke. He woke with a start, disoriented in the darkness. The alley was silent except for the hum of a distant streetlight. A wave of longing washed over him so deep it felt like drowning. If he could speak, he might have howled Clay's name to the moon. Instead, he lay there, silent tears tracing tracks through the dust on his muzzle. Sleep came only in brief spells that night. At sunrise, Max rose, determined to continue. He skirted the edges of town, following the main road that led out into more open countryside. Overhead, the sun climbed higher, a relentless orb that turned the pavement into a griddle. His injured paw pads made every step feel like walking on shards of glass. Still, he limped on, ears flattened, tail low. Mid-morning found him near a farm stand. Families with small children stopped to buy fresh produce. The air smelled like peaches and strawberries. Max's mouth watered, but more than that, he was grateful for a chance to find water. He spotted a communal bowl for pets at the edge of the stand. Someone had kindly placed it there, presumably for visiting dogs. Ignoring the wary stares of a few customers, Max dragged himself over. The water was lukewarm but refreshing. He drank until he could feel vitality returning to his limbs. A little girl approached him, giggling. She had a flower in her hand and tried to place it behind Max's ear. For a moment, Max experienced the gentle touch of small fingers in his fur. Her parents called for her, concerned in their voices, and she rushed back to them, leaving Max alone once again. He watched them drive away, envy burning through him. She had a family. She was safe, loved. Max wondered if he would ever feel that security again. A short while later, a farmhand came out from the stand carrying a bucket. He poured some fresh water into the bowl. Max gratefully drank more, though he didn't trust the man enough to let him get too close. The farmhand sighed, shaking his head. "You poor thing," he murmured. "Just let me help you." But Max stood up, stumbling toward the road again. He couldn't linger. Some primal force inside him urged him onward, as if invisible threads bound him to the next mile, and the next, and the next. By noon, the sky was a merciless blue. Heat waves shimmered over the asphalt. Max took refuge under the shade of a billboard touting the best diner in 3 counties. He panted, drool slipping from the corners of his mouth. His body threatened to shut down, muscles quivered and his vision blurred at the edges. A tractor-trailer roared past, sending dust swirling. Moments later, a car slowed to a crawl, the driver peering out the window. Max stared back, too drained to react. The car moved on and he slumped down, pressing his belly against the cooler earth beneath the billboard. He drifted into a half-sleep, mind replaying scattered memories like a broken film reel. Clay laughing, Clay rummaging in a kitchen drawer for a treat, Clay asleep on a worn couch with Max curled at his feet. Each recollection was so vivid that for a heartbeat, Max thought he was back in that simpler time. Then the dryness of his throat and the throbbing of his paw pads reeled him back to the harsh present. A gentle breeze ruffled his fur, waking him fully. He stood, forcing himself to move even though his limbs felt like lead. Step by agonizing step, he pushed northward once more, guided only by the faint flicker of hope that perhaps, around the next bend, Clay would be waiting. He passed a sign that read, "Next town, 9 miles." 9 miles might as well have been 9,000. But he trudged on, refusing to rest until the sun dipped again toward the horizon. Late afternoon arrived with a blessed cloud cover, the heat diminishing slightly. Max caught sight of a shimmering reflection up ahead, water, a small creek winding through a culvert under the road. He waded in, letting the cool liquid wash the grime from his coat. He drank until he could drink no more. For a moment he felt something akin to peace, suspended in the hush of flowing water, the chirping of crickets hidden among reeds. He climbed out onto the creek bank, shaking off droplets that sparkled in the late daylight. In the distance he could see the silhouette of a water tower, a modest collection of rooftops. That would be his next destination, his next chance. The journey felt endless, but each small reprieve, like this creek, offered just enough comfort for him to continue. Reaching by sundown, Max prowled the quiet streets. Cozy houses lined the roads, their windows glowing with lamplight. He pressed himself against fences, sniffing for any trace of Clay. Families settled down for dinner. Scents of cooked meat and spices drifted in the air, but Max didn't have the nerve to approach. Instead, He roamed until he came upon a tiny park in the center of town, a patch of grass with a single swing set and a bench. He collapsed there, too exhausted to search further. In the darkness, a figure emerged from a nearby house, an elderly woman wearing a shawl. She walked slowly, and Max watched her warily. She placed a paper plate of scrambled eggs mixed with bits of meat on the grass, then retreated several steps. Max sniffed the air, nose quivering in anticipation. The smell was divine. He glanced at the woman, who stood with hands folded, her face kind. Hunger prevailed over caution, and he crept forward, devouring the meal. She didn't move closer, respecting his boundaries. When he finished, he looked up at her, tail giving the slightest wag. She nodded, as though acknowledging his unspoken thank you. Then she returned to her house, leaving Max alone in the gentle hush of the park. For the first time in days, he felt a thread of comfort. He curled up in the cool grass, gazing at the stars that emerged in the velvet sky. His eyelids drooped, and before he knew it, sleep wrapped him in its arms. Yet even in slumber, the call of Clay lingered. Dreams brought him a swirl of images: Clay rubbing his belly, Clay laughing as Max played with a squeaky toy, Clay's tear-filled eyes the day he adopted Max. The bond between them had been so strong. What had happened that day at the diner, Max might never fully understand, but love transcended logic. He had chosen to chase that love across 50 miles, and he would keep going until the bond was sealed again, or until his last breath left his weary body. Dawn arrived in a soft pink glow, and Max woke to the first chirps of morning birds. Stiffly, he stood, shaking off the dew. His mind was clearer after a night of proper rest. The smell of last night's eggs lingered, but soon hunger crept back, reminding him he hadn't eaten enough to fully satisfy his needs. Still, he felt better than he had in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the day he found Clay. He wandered further into. A handful of shops lined the main street: a grocery, a pharmacy, a hardware store, and outside a man sipped coffee while reading a newspaper. Max approached slowly, sniffing for any sign of Clay on the man's shoes or pants. Nothing. The man glanced down, eyebrows raising. "Where'd you come from?" he asked, tossing a bit of muffin toward Max. The dog ate it but hurried away before the man could reach for him. It was mid-morning when Max's ears perked at a distant sound, a familiar engine rumble, reminiscent of Clay's old truck. His heart thundered. He sprinted in the direction of the noise, weaving between cars and startled pedestrians. Rounding a corner, he saw a battered, green pickup parked in front of a convenience store. It looked so much like Clay's. Max let out an excited bark and raced toward it, nearly colliding with a woman pushing a stroller. But as he approached the driver's side door, he realized that, while it was indeed a battered green truck, the license plates were different. The driver was a middle-aged woman with short hair, rummaging through a bag of groceries. Disappointment dropped like a stone in Max's stomach. He retreated, tail tucked, ignoring the curious stares of onlookers. Wandering aimlessly, he found himself behind the convenience store. By chance, a teenage employee opened the back door to wheel out garbage. The teen spotted Max and made a kissing sound. "Here, buddy," he said, rummaging in his pocket for a piece of jerky. Max hesitated, approached, and snatched the food, tail wagging slightly. "You look like you're in rough shape," the teen muttered, reaching out to pat Max's head. Max let him, just for a moment, enjoying the rare touch of gentle human affection, before stepping back. Something deep in Max's soul insisted that if he stayed too long, he might lose the chance to find Clay. He traversed the length of the main street, sniffing doorways, searching for any clue. He found a whiff of something reminiscent of Clay's aftershave near the pharmacy, but it led to a dead end, a row of potted plants outside a florist's shop. Defeated, he collapsed in the shade of a stoop, panting heavily. As afternoon shadows grew, Max's ears caught the sound of a passing conversation. "Did you hear about that man who got into an accident down the highway?" a voice said. "They airlifted him to the county general last week, I think." Max didn't understand the specifics, but some primal sense of urgency stirred within him. A sudden thought took hold. What if Clay had been hurt? What if he was lying in a hospital room somewhere, waiting? The idea electrified Max. He stood, bracing himself against the ache in his paws, tail stiff with renewed determination. He didn't know where the county general was, but his nose told him to follow the highway out of town. Maybe it was coincidence, or fate, or some intangible thread connecting his spirit to Clay's. But Max decided in that moment that he would find a hospital, any hospital, if that meant a chance of seeing Clay. His mind wasn't capable of rational planning, but his heart pointed him onward. Nightfall found him wandering back roads again, the outline of farmland giving way to more urban sprawl. Streetlights glowed in the distance. His entire body protested, but he refused to stop, forging ahead under a sky strewn with stars. Rain threatened once again, lightning occasionally illuminating the horizon. Max kept his head down, forging his own path through fields when the roads became too busy. He took short breaks by ditches, lapping up standing water, ignoring its foul taste. Hunger clenched his belly, but the unstoppable force within him would not let him deviate for long. Finally, late in the night, he saw the faint red glow of a hospital sign high above the treetops. His tail lifted a fraction. If Clay was anywhere, maybe he was there, behind those walls. Despite his exhaustion, Max broke into a ragged run. The few cars on the street swerved to avoid him, horns blaring. He kept going until he reached the hospital's entrance, bright fluorescent lights reflecting off glass doors. The automatic doors slid open as a man in scrubs stepped out, and Max took the chance to slip inside. At once, chaos enveloped him. The sterile smell of disinfectant, the beep of machines, the hurried shuffle of nurses and visitors. Max froze, overwhelmed. A security guard spotted him, calling out in alarm. Max ran, nails skittering on the polished floor. He frantically sniffed the air, searching for Clay's scent among the chemical tang. People gasped and pointed. One nurse dropped a clipboard. A child's voice shouted, "Look, a doggy." Finally, the security guard cornered Max near an elevator bank. Terrified, Max backed up against a wall, panting. A pair of paramedics joined in, gently corralling him. "Easy there," one said. "We're not gonna hurt you." But all Max could see was a circle of imposing figures, all unknown. He cowered, whining softly. In the tense standoff, an elderly woman approached, wearing a hospital gown and leaning on a walker. She gazed at Max with watery eyes. "He's scared," she murmured. "Let him be." The security guard's radio crackled. "Animal control on the way," a voice said. Desperation surged in Max. If he was taken away, how would he ever find Clay? Summoning a last reserve of energy, he darted between the guard's legs, narrowly avoiding a kick. He sprinted down another corridor, ignoring the shouts behind him. His paws slipped on the floor, nearly causing him to crash into a row of vending machines. Staff members ran toward him. He pivoted, found a stairwell door propped open by a wedge, and barreled inside. He raced up the stairs, heart pounding. Floor after floor, the clank of his nails on the metal steps echoed through the shaft. The corridors smelled of antiseptic and stale air, but it was better than the suffocating presence of the crowd below. Reaching the top floor, he used his muzzle to nudge open the door and emerged onto a quiet hallway with dimmed lights. A sign indicated it was the ICU. The hush was somber, broken only by the soft beeps and hisses of medical machinery behind closed doors. Max slunk through the hall, his body shaking. He sniffed at the door seams, searching for Clay. Most were silent, some had faint voices. Then, near the end of the hallway, he froze. A familiar scent wafted through the narrow gap between the door and the floor, a smell that instantly made his eyes widen. Clay, he was sure of it. Whimpering, Max scratched at the door, ignoring the pain in his cracked nails. His entire body trembled with anticipation. Max pawed at the door again, letting out a soft, plaintive whine. Everything else, the The fear, the exhaustion, the throbbing pain in his feet faded into the background.